Okay, so this presentation is on the awarding arrangements for summer 2021. Anything that I say today you'll find at skillsandeducationgroupawards.co.uk. If you go to our website, you can see there is the COVID-19 hub. I'd encourage everyone to go there to search for the latest information. What I'm going to tell you today, we'll try our best to give you as much information as possible. But as I'm sure you can appreciate, sometimes, especially with this being subject to a consultation that still hasn't closed, things can change from time to time. The purpose of today's drop-in and the briefing I'm giving you is to try and give as much information as we're able to at this point regarding the announcements that Ofqual made yesterday. I think one of our areas of learning from last year is we tried to hold back information until we had the full picture, and feedback we received from a lot of centres is they preferred as much information as soon as we can give it. So we're taking this slightly different approach this year. There are a few more people in the waiting room, so sorry while I admit them. Okay, so yes, so everything I've said today will be on the COVID-19 hub on our website. Moving on, so to sort of frame where we're going to be this year, I thought I'd start by going over last year a bit. So last year we had the ERF, the Extraordinary Regulatory Framework for summer 2020. This framework meant that some qualifications, those most like A-levels and GCSEs, and also those with certain funding statuses, were allowed centre assessed grades or CAGs. Those were very much estimates based on evidence of the learner's performance up to the 20th of March 2020. As you may recall, once centres sent in their CAGs, we moderated, although often we moderated at a later date rather than holding up the process of awarding. And we also did data analysis on the results to ensure that any results, especially for graded qualifications, were consistent with previous years, or at least within what Ofqual would consider to be an acceptable tolerance. For other qualifications last year, there was no option to have CAGs, and those qualifications allowed adaptations. So you might have adapted the assessment method, or in fact the delivery method as well. And finally, last year there was a third category of qualifications whereby you had to assess them as normal. And if you couldn't assess as a normal, then you had to delay. Moving into this academic year, Ofqual proposed a new framework, the EERF, the Extended Extraordinary Regulatory Framework, which was designed to cope with local lockdowns. I think with the benefit of hindsight, Ofqual will probably agree that it wasn't meant to cope with the with national lockdowns to the extent that we saw in January this year. Which is why we are where we are now with Ofqual's announcements this week. The EERF allowed methods of assessment or methods of delivery to be adapted in line with the requirements of awarding organisations. If you go onto any qualification page on our website, you should find, and if you don't, please tell us, but we believe it's there on every qualification, you should find instructions on what you can do or what you can't do with regards to adapting that qualification. For some qualifications, that's a very simple, you cannot adapt this. For other qualifications, we've given some guidance, and for where we can as well, we've also given examples of adaptations that have happened either for that qualification or for similar qualifications. And that is all on the website at the moment. However, as I said, that was really designed for regional lockdowns, local lockdowns, and certainly wasn't designed to cope with the scale of upheaval we saw in January this year. And because of that, in early January, DfE and Ofqual took the unusual step of doing a joint consultation. So this consultation was in two parts. So it was the DfE part first, then the Ofqual part later. DfE proposed that there should be some kind of alternative arrangement for written exams for qualifications most like general qualifications, and they thought that some form of teacher assessment would be the best way to do that. However, DfE were quite clear that they were proposing that where a qualification demonstrated some kind of occupational competency or it led to a license to practice, then assessment should continue in line with public health guidance. Now, the Ofqual part of the consultation went into a little more detail. Ofqual proposed that awarding organisations may make awards of qualifications where not all assessments or even all of the curriculum had taken place. Ofqual proposed a situation whereby awarding organisations would determine the minimum evidential threshold in order for a qualification to be awarded. So therefore, the awarding organisation would decide how much evidence they would require in order to award that qualification. Ofqual also envisaged a world whereby awarding organisations are encouraged to make consistent decisions across the sector. And finally, they asked that awarding organisations were able to provide clear and timely guidance to teachers on how grades were awarded and what they needed to do. Now, this consultation closed and I believe received more than 3,000 responses. However, these responses were by and large quite positive, which brings us up to this week, where Ofqual launched for vocational and technical qualifications the VTQ contingency regulatory framework. So this framework that they are proposing and now consulting on, the consultation ends on the 11th of March, will replace the ERF and the EERF. The proposed framework will be retrospectively applied back to the 1st of August 2020 and will end on the 31st of August 2021. We did query when Ofqual first raised this with AOs why the 31st of August 2021, and the answer we now know is because of the ministerial direction to Ofqual that was given by the Secretary of State earlier this week, which quite clearly says that arrangements could be for this academic year. What we're told by Ofqual is that doesn't mean that this will necessarily end on the 31st of August. There is scope to extend it. However, the steer they've been given and the instruction they've been given from the Minister is very clear that this is originally only for this academic year. So the VTQ Contingency Regulatory Framework, or VCRF, as we need to get used to calling it, proposes two scopes of qualifications for VTQ. So that's category A, or not in scope. And these qualifications are most likely to suggest the occupational competence, workplace competencies, or some kind of practical skill. Whereas the category B qualifications, or the ones that Ofqual is calling in scope, are qualifications that are most like GCSEs or A-levels, or qualifications that will lead to progression. So, for example, when you see our list when that is released on Monday, you'll see a lot of entry-level and level 1 provision that didn't allow estimation last year has now been moved to category B this year, and that is because actually with the benefit of hindsight, I think we've accepted that actually level 1 and entry level are more commonly used for progression than for a move into the workplace or a practical skill. So also, as I've put there, the starting point for the list of qualifications that will be in category B this year is the same list of qualifications that allowed estimation in summer 2020, and I'll come back onto that later. So with the category A qualifications, not much changes from, or not anything that I can see changes from how we've been working this year already. So category A feels very, very similar to the EERF that's been in place this year. Assessments should be delivered as usual where that's possible, and centres are absolutely free to make adaptations in line with any requirements that we've set for that qualification. As I said earlier, the adaptations are on the qualification page on the website. We would encourage you to go there and have a look if you're thinking about making adaptations. We try to keep the pages updated with adaptations for that qualification that other centres have used, or for similar qualifications whereby we think that adaptation might work. If a qualification cannot be assessed and adaptations can't be utilised, then the suggestion from Ofqual with this proposed framework is that assessment should be delayed until such a point that the qualifications could be assessed. So that really is no different to what we've already seen in the EERF that's been in place for this year. For the Category B qualifications, things feel quite different. In many respects, it feels similar to last year, but in other ways, it's a little bit dissimilar. So the starting point for Category B qualifications is still that centres are encouraged to deliver the qualifications, are encouraged to assess the qualifications, and assessment should be delivered and should take place as usual where that is possible in line with public health guidance. However, centres may also make adaptations in line with the requirements set out by Skills and Education Group Awards. So as I said, with the Category A qualifications, if you look on the pages on the website, you'll be able to find information about adaptations there. However, if you cannot adapt, if you cannot assess even with adaptations, then the process differs. And a teacher assessment may be used to award the qualification. And these will be called teacher assessed grades, as we found out yesterday. And the one thing that Ofqual is proposing that's very different to last year is teacher assessed grades under the proposal are a qualification level decision. So what that means is, whereas last year, where teachers, assessors were asked to estimate learner grades, and we asked for unit level decisions, Ofqual are envisaging a framework in a world in which only qualification level decisions have been given. We've already offered Ofqual some feedback on that, because that does make issuing a transcript very difficult. And we feel certainly for entry-level qualifications and level 1 qualifications, a lot of those learners may not progress. That may be the only qualification they ever get, and therefore we feel that transcript is quite an important document. Ofqual's response to us was very much along the lines of, if we want to go above and beyond the requirements of the framework, that is fine. So that now leaves us with a decision to make around whether we'll be asking for qualification level assessment decisions, or whether we'll be asking for unit level assessment decisions, or whether that might vary from qualification to qualification. So we are aware that that is a particularly complex area that awarding organisations will need to get their heads around. And from my understanding, we're not the only awarding organisation that's possibly wondering whether qualification level decisions may not be right for the learners, even though they're possibly easier for us to handle as an AO. So one thing Ofqual have done, because of the qualification level decision that they're proposing, is they're also proposing to remove the requirement for this summer for awarding organisations to print a transcript alongside a qualification certificate. At the moment, that's a regulatory thing that we absolutely have to do. So that may change this year. So Ofqual have put up quite a nice illustration of this, actually, which you can share with your learners. It is available to download from gov.uk. It took me quite a while to find it, if I'm honest. What I'll try and do is find a better quality version of one, and if we can, we'll make that available to centres. However, as you can see, they've summarised it quite neatly for learners, whereby if you're doing GCSEs and A-levels or qualifications similar, this is what happened. If you're doing qualifications that aren't similar, this is what happened. And finally, if you're doing occupational competency or skills qualifications, this is what might happen. So I thought that's quite a nice diagram, so I've put that up to share. In terms of our next steps, we have already, in anticipation of Ofqual's announcement, decided our categorisation for qualifications, and that will be published on our website on Monday. The reason we're waiting for Monday is that the web developer is making it so it's a bit more user-friendly than it is. What we didn't want to do is simply put up a list of qualifications requiring people to spend ages looking through their for their specific qualification they're delivering. So that will be up on Monday. What we would ask is that if centres, if you see anything there that you want to query, please do query it with us, because we have until the 9th of March to lock in that list with Ofqual. So if you can tell us by the 9th of March, we can look at what other awarding organisations are doing and then possibly change our approach for that qualification. But we will be telling after the 9th of March, we'll be telling Ofqual, so you've got until the 9th of March to let us know if you believe we've categorised the qualification wrong. We are anticipating, obviously we've gone through them one by one, but it's quite possible we won't have made every decision right. Our next step is we will issue guidance with regards to minimum evidential thresholds. What I want to be clear on is this may or may not be a set percentage. So for some qualifications, we may say if you've reached a certain percentage of the assessment tasks, then we can award the entire qualification. However, for other qualifications, what we may be saying is actually we see this unit as absolutely very important, and therefore that unit must be achieved in order for the qualification to be awarded. We will be doing that on a qualification by qualification level, and one of the things I'll be doing over the next week or so is speaking to other awarding organisations and trying to come up with something that's a little bit consistent, because Ofqual haven't provided AOs with any guidance on this, and what I certainly don't want to do is, for example, say 50% and then another AO said 30% and then someone else has said 80%, and we're trying where possible to avoid that inconsistency across the market. So we will be having these discussions with awarding organisations where we have relationships and that we feel offer similar qualifications. We will also publish guidance for centres, and that guidance will include what we expect to see in terms of the evidence presented to justify a teacher assessed grades, and also our IQA expectations. What we may well also include in that is what we're expecting centres to do as part of the IQA in terms of ensuring that their grades are looked at against previous years, and this is where it differs to last year. Last year it felt very much like centres had to have a similar profile in terms of graded qualifications with previous years. This year Ofqual have given a clear steer that that isn't necessarily the case. However, they will be requiring AOs to make sure that centres have looked back over previous years to ensure they're happy with the decisions they've made, which is slightly different. Finally, we will also release a new appeals process. So initially, when we saw the proposals from Ofqual, we were planning to roll over our appeals process from last year. However, Ofqual have now said that our learners will be able to appeal against the award of the grade as well as the process. And for that reason, the appeals policy we launched last year to cope with the ERF, we don't believe to be particularly relevant to this year. So we'll be launching a new appeals policy for students to use if they feel that their grade hasn't been reached properly. It's likely that that appeals policy will fall in line with our existing appeals policy that's already there, and require centres in the first instance, so learners in the first instance, to go back to their centre with any appeal. What we don't want to do is be in a situation where we are overruling a centre's decision without any opportunity for the centre to review that decision and put it right first. So I'll end where I started. All of the information, all of the latest information we have will be on the COVID-19 hub on our website. We are updating that regularly. So if you go to Skills and Education Group Awards.co.uk, in the top bar there, you'll see COVID-19. Click on that and it will bring up all our latest information. And I would absolutely steer you to that in the first instance. We'll be carrying on having the drop-in clinics as we have done, hosted by Andrew and Andrea, also on top of the information that goes on our website. But our website makes a very good first port of call, and especially over the next weeks as decisions are made, we'll be updating that as regularly as we can. And that is it in terms of the sort of briefing section of this. So if anyone has any questions at all, please feel free to ask. What I'd also say is this was marketed as a drop-in clinic, so now is your opportunity to ask absolutely anything you want to. I'm joined on the call by some colleagues. I can see Kay, I can see Andrew, and I can see Daniel for a start. So if anyone has any questions at all, we'll do our absolute best to answer them. Thank you very much. Hello, South Coast Hydrotherapy.
Hello, so we teach obviously the hydrotherapy course.
Yes.
So we've done the majority of the theory, obviously, via distance learning. And I've got a couple of students that are due to come in March for their practical side. Okay. I rang the council to ask, like, because obviously it's something that can't be done from, it has to be done at the centre. And I asked the council if we would be able to start from the 8th, but they said to ask you. Do you have any advice at all?
No, in fact, we've been pointing centres back at their local authorities when they ask this, because certainly we can't tell you. We can offer the qualification, but we can't tell you about the rules or how your local authority may interpret that.
Okay.
Sorry, that's no use whatsoever. I appreciate.
They sound kind of were like, oh, the rules aren't very clear. So they were like, there's, you know, that this is the reason why you could do it. This is the reason why potentially you can't, because obviously there's a stay-at-home order. And they said, yeah, we advise you to ask you guys, but I guess I don't know. I know that the learner that is due to come, she does have to travel like two hours and obviously have a hotel, which is the issue that obviously the council did raise, but she's really struggling to get any other time off work in order to complete the qualification. So yeah,
I mean, what I do know is that and I mean, probably other people on the call from colleges will know better than I do, but that colleges and schools will be opening from March the 8th. That doesn't necessarily mean that it will be straight away for everyone. However, you're a training provider, aren't you? And I appreciate that your local authority may or may not interpret that as being within the March the 8th rule or not. I'm afraid I can't help with that.
That's okay. Thank you anyways. And she kind of advised us to do like a risk assessment and everything. So I guess I'll just see speak to them again. Thank you anyways though.
Okay, sorry I can't help with that.
That's okay. Thank you.
Has anyone else got any questions they'd like to ask? I mean, as I said, we'll get more information out to you as it becomes available. We've taken a slightly different approach this year. Last year, we took the decision that we didn't want to drip feed centres with information. However, I think when we reviewed how it went last year, a lot of people told us actually they'd have preferred it if we gave them what information we had when we were able to. So because of that, that's what we're doing. I appreciate we don't have all the answers today in terms of what the evidential threshold will be, but that will get out to you as soon as we can. There is a question. Sorry.
Carl, I was just going to say there are a couple of questions in the chat room we might need to look at.
Will the spring term exams in June go ahead for the level 3 advanced technical courses? I'm not sure what qualification that relates to, I'm afraid, sorry. If you can put in the chat, Nicole, I'm more than happy to have a look into that. Mark Clifford, oh sorry, that was directly, sorry Mark. When will we know who our EQAs will be? Obviously to follow through on the requirements. We will allocate EQAs as usual. What we might do for centres that are using category B qualifications is we will put the emphasis on getting the qualifications out. I think that's most important, and then we might do some retrospective moderation after. It really depends on the availability of our moderators. A lot of our moderators work for other AOs as well. So what we might find this year is that us and their other employers are all asking for their attention at the same time. So we'll do whatever we can.
I think the thing is with this, as soon as we can tie up with someone on this from yourselves, then we can work our way through what's required. The MCQs and the exams that they do online, obviously we've got those coming up, and I know that the electrical department, what they delivered, last minute sort of thing, they were forced to obviously try and get those exams done with students. We are still looking at trying to roll them out after Easter. Is that facility still going to be there for us to try and do that? Where do we sit on this? It's little questions like that. And is it a case of you'd like some portfolio evidence instead? And the sort of evidence we'd have to use if we're not going to run these exams and roll those out.
Okay, from my understanding, and Andrew, I can see Andrew furrowing his brow also, I think the qualifications of MCQs will remain as online MCQs.
Right,
so that will be
there, get them booked.
Yes, get in and get them booked, absolutely. In terms of moderations, we will be booking them in the normal way, I presume, Andrew. And
as far as we're aware at the moment, yes, we will do.
Right, okay, that's great. Yeah. Okay, thank you very much.
Carl, there's a question a bit further back as to whether the slides from today's presentation are going to be available.
I will speak nicely to our communications team and see if we can get them on the COVID hub. Okay, there's a question about level 1 motor vehicles. So no face-to-face moderation visits last year. Will this be the same this year? Some colleges are restricting visitors. At the moment, we are not doing face-to-face visits. At some point, they will have to resume, especially for high-risk sectors. And for all kinds of reason, motor vehicle, we would consider to be a high-risk sector. In terms of when we resume face-to-face moderation visits, we haven't made a decision on that. But obviously it will have to be in line with the requirements of colleges as well. Because if colleges aren't allowing visitors, then obviously we can't come and do a face-to-face moderation. Thank you for your feedback, Brian. I just read that. Thank you. If anyone else has any other questions, feel free to ask, and we will do our absolute best. I appreciate that this only came out from Ofqual yesterday. We had the slight advantage of a few days foresight and notice, which is why we're able to put this on today. But if you have any questions at all, we'll do our best, and we will carry on updating our COVID hub as we make decisions, because especially the kind of evidence you're looking for, that we're expecting you to present, and the evidential threshold, I do appreciate those are quite big and important things, and at the moment we haven't got an explicit answer on that yet. Has anyone else got any other questions? Well, thank you for the thumbs up, Mark. Okay, I'll keep with it for a couple of minutes in case anyone does come up with any questions before closing the meeting. Leonie, that's a fantastic question. Is there a results submission deadline, or is that yet to be decided? It is difficult to say. I think probably for qualifications that bear UCAS points, so those are the foundation diplomas in art and design level 2 and level 3, and also the qualifications that bear performance points, so that's the level 1 automotive. Probably there will be a date, and I haven't got that date for you yet. What has made it a bit more difficult is GCSE results being apparently pushed back. It's clear that Ofqual do anticipate there will be some kinds of results day. Last year we actually had all our results out for those qualifications before results day. So in terms of those qualifications, yes, there likely is to be a submission day. For other qualifications, probably not. We will probably allow you to submit results as and when they're ready, and we will moderate if we're moderating, or do whatever we're going to do as and when we're able to do that. From an AO perspective, having a results submission day for some qualifications is useful, but if you have it for every qualification, then it creates a bottleneck of work and sort of slows everything down. So we'll try and encourage people where possible to submit results as they become available. Have I missed any questions at all?
I can't see that any are missed.
Okay.
If we have, please shout up. I've kept an eye on the chat. I can't see if there's anything that's not been answered, Carl.
Okay. I'll give it another minute or two and then I will call it a day then, unless anyone has anything else. Thank you for attending. I've left the COVID Hub page on the screen, but feel free to go there and explore if you want any information at all. We will be updating that as soon as information becomes available. Also, I mean, as I said at the start, if any of our qualifications are categorised wrong, we think they're categorised wrong, please do tell us by the 9th of March if possible, and we will be able to change them before our submission date to Ofqual. After the 9th of March, it will be a bit more challenging to change them because we have to present Ofqual with a robust reason as to why we're changing them. Okay, I'm going to stop recording.